Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Best Darn Everything. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons but is tired of us talking about The Simpsons on a weekly basis. So instead, we're talking about literally anything else. And this week, we wanted to be wake. This wake, we wanted to be taught. It is. It's a wake for the game. Cyberpunk 2077 is what's happening on this week's episode. But before we get into that, let me introduce to you, of course, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
I think this will be an interesting conversation, honestly. I think it'll open up some other games involved with this as well. And I feel like we'll have a little bit difference of opinion on this to some degree, which is good for us because throughout Simpson recordings, we typically have kind of similar feelings on most of the episodes, so it'll be good.
We both hate The Simpsons and just shit on it weekly
for 4 years. So yeah, this will be exciting. So I guess I should. I don't get to prep for the throwing it back to you as much as I do on The Simpsons, but I'll throw it back to you, the man, the myth, the Mr. Refund. It is Miles.
Since you said it already, we should talk about right off the bat. No matter how you feel about this game, I think that it is going to go down historically as one of like the biggest gaming failures in terms of launches ever, because within a few days, this game has already been both offered refunds and removed from the PlayStation Store, where you can no longer even purchase it if you wanted to digitally.
Well, here's something I'll throw out there too. Do you remember a game from a few years ago called Fallout 76?
I know of it. I know it was a big disaster, but that game worked at least. It may have been shitty, but it actually worked upon release.
It was terribly buggy when it first came.
But it worked. Like I was reading about that comparison earlier today, and like that's like the big difference people have already been arguing about is like, well, if they didn't refund that game, they don't need to Cyberpunk 77, but like they literally, like, I couldn't play it. Like the game breakingly froze on me multiple times. I know you have a different experience, but I think I'm actually in the majority on this one, and you just happen to get lucky.
And see, Fallout 76 froze me out of the game numerous times to where it was getting very frustrating, but I was having fun playing online with our friend Toby and his brother, so it was.
But here's the thing, if like, so you say you got froze out, but once you got frozen out, when you loaded back in, could you just start back right where you were?
No, it depends. There was times where I'd had a lot of like lootable stuff that I had gotten that I had lost because it went back to your last autosave, and most of the time it would freeze when you're in an area where there's like too much going on, too many enemies, too many things that are making it like run too hard, or I don't know how programming works, but it just too much on screen at once, and that would make the game crash. And when you load back in, you're well before you were in that area, so anything you got, it's gone. So
the difference for that versus my experience would be same thing. You get to a point where it's completely frozen, and like you can tell something's supposed to be happening. In my experience, it was actually, in my case, very light spoilers, I'll say, for this. I literally can only spoil up till like the very beginning of the first chapter, so like I can't really give away too much even if I wanted to. But within like the prologue, I got to this point where you're supposed to do a checkpoint with the cops, and like your block is like shut down, and you have to like talk your way through it to get home or whatever. Oh, wow. And multiple times it would just get stuck. I would pull up there, and the cop would come and start talking to me, and then nothing, and it would just freeze. And then if you like restarted the game, it would load the same scene, and you do it all the way over again. And like basically, I had to go and find a previous save that was far enough back before the previous autosave that it wouldn't boot you from that point again. It was insanely frustrating. And that was like the main issue, but like that was like already after dealing, for me personally, like anytime, for instance, I had a gun in the game, you would see my hands holding the gun, and I could fire bullets, and there'd be like this motion, but there was no actual gun. You could just see nothing. Like you could see my empty hands holding nothing. And
I remember you telling me a lot about that. I only had that happen once, but like the gun, as soon as I started aiming the gun, it materialized in my hands, but that it's only happened to me once so far.
I'm told the guns look really cool in the game. I just can't see them for myself.
Yeah. So because of everything I read online, like I work nights. In case I'm sure people that listen to the show regularly know that. So like the game was downloading while I was at work, basically, and I'd already heard all the stories, and then I'd heard Miles's experience. So when I finally got to play the game last weekend, I would regularly save. Like whenever I was at a stopping point, I would basically save, and so I have the auto save and the save file. But I only had one crash through the entire play that I've had so far. Now I'm only like 8 hours in, I think.
Oh my
But
god, it's grueling.
I had one game crash, I think, and it was literally like 1 to 2 minutes in a cinematic part. So like when I reloaded, I just had to redo a quick fight where I shot a couple things out of the sky, and then like when I did it the second time, a character was handing me something, and then I had the character hand you something, but you can't see it in their hands, which I'd heard about. But that didn't happen until after the game crashed the first time. So that's the only bug. That's the only bugs I've experienced in it so far. So my playtime with it has been a lot better than pretty much everybody I've heard. So like I've been enjoying it a little bit, but I do have complaints about the game that I'm sure we'll get into here in a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it's also at least noteworthy to say that we're both on the original PlayStation 4. You are literally on the opening, you were one of the first buyers of the PlayStation 4. So you've got the Gen 1. I waited until Uncharted 4 came out, and I bought this special edition Uncharted 4 bundle that they had that was blue and whatnot. But that was a few months after. I don't know. I don't know technically if it's the same hardware, if it's Gen 2 or what, but they are both original PS4 consoles, which for the most part has been deemed completely broken. Like the people that have been having any success at all have been the people that are either on the PS4 Pro, which has had better luck than the PS4, and then the PS5, of course, if you're lucky enough.
Sons of bitches.
That have that. Not only are you lucky enough to have the console, but you're lucky enough to have the most working version game of Cyberpunk 2077. I'm glad that you are getting a positive experience for what it's worth. I mean, it's not like I'm like, damn it, you should be on the rest of on here with the rest of us. Because I'll even go. We'll probably dive more into this when we talk about our gaming preferences in general. But I'll even go as far as to say that I don't think that if Cyberpunk 2077 was working perfectly exactly as it was supposed to, I still don't think it would be my favorite experience. I think I would find it a lot more entertaining than I was because of the, having to backtrack constantly is frustrating. But I still think that there would have been a lot about it that I would have found very tedious. Specifically, the skill tree setup was really obnoxious in my opinion, and then the hack. I actually like the hacking. But whatever the thing was where you had to control the camera and whatnot, that was obnoxious.
So let's start getting into that then, because that's the first thing I wanted to point out.
Actually, then before we dive into that, we haven't even really at all talked about what's going on. So I'm gonna read a quick summary and score from Metacritic, and then let's dive into your favorite part of. Is that what you're about to say? It's your favorite part?
Not at all.
Okay, that's your least favorite part.
Well, no, I'm just talking. Go ahead and do your thing, and then we'll do.
Cool. Okay, Metacritic summary of the game in general here. Cyberpunk 2077 is an open-world action-adventure story set in Night City, a megapolis obsessed with power, glamour, and body modification. Assume the role of V, a mercenary outlaw going after a one-of-a-kind implant that is the key to immortality. You can customize your character's cyberware, skill set, and playstyle, and explore a vast city where the choices you make shape the story of the world around you. Become a cyberpunk, an urban mercenary equipped with cybernetic enhancements, and build your legend on the streets of Night City. Take the riskiest job of your life and go after prototype implants that is the key to immortality. And goddamn, that sounds dope. That really is a cool concept. But unfortunately, sitting right above that, the Metascore, the combined overall score of this game, is a 55 with an even more brutal score. That's 55 out of 100 for what it's worth. With an even more brutal score over on the user side of things, because they have a 3.2 rating when you take out any of the press, essentially, and that's just actual people playing the game, reviewing the game.
3.2 out of 10.
correct.
Yeah. And that's going to be a lot of angry people with the bugs and the massive load of patches, and that's understandable. And when you piss people off, they're going to speak out.
So I think it's also noteworthy to mention that Cyberpunk 2077 was actually originally announced all the way back in May of 2012, with the first gameplay or the first game trailer releasing in January 2013. And it was officially confirmed that year at E3 that it would be coming out. It was announced originally that it would be coming out in August of 2019. Of course, we are now in December of 2020, a full year plus after the original release date. And here we are with a hot mess. And in my opinion, the best thing I've seen that sums up what's going on with Cyberpunk, the real problem is the Bort posting meme that I saw, where it was the Rodney Dangerfield scene where he's like, "Oh, put her back in," but instead it was instead of the girl, it was a copy of 2077, and he's like, "Whoa, put it back in! It's not done yet." And I feel like that is exactly what happened. I don't know exactly what went wrong. I don't know why it takes 8 years to program a game. I don't know why, as a human species, we find that unreasonable. They are doing a lot. 8 years doesn't seem like that outrageous of an ask, in my opinion, if you're building an entire universe. I mean, God took 7 full days, and he's like a superhero or something. He's like Superman, I'm told. But regardless, I think the hype that builds over that time definitely hurts things, but it shouldn't be out yet. If they had just waited and released this game when it worked properly, I think that meta score that we just talked about, to your point, you have many less angry people. It probably gets a much more fair score. I think that if this game comes out with meeting expectations, or at least not breaking your system, I'm feeling like this game is going to hit somewhere between a 7 and a 9 easy.
See, I was going to say about a 7.5, maybe an 8. I
You've
think
played a lot more of it than I have, to be fair.
I think the hype for this game is ultimately its downfall, because there's just too many expectations. There's very few games that can be hyped and actually deliver, and most of them have delays. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is Legend of Zelda series. There's so much hype every time they're going to release one of those games. They always get delayed, but it seems like Nintendo does a good job of fixing whatever they need to fix, because when the games come out, everyone just loves them to pieces. So outside of that, it's hard to deliver when there's so much hype around a game. And the issue with this game is that they did all this marketing with Keanu Reeves a few years ago, and they showed gameplay footage saying you can make all your own choices. And I've already done the part they showcased in that from E3 or whatever it was, where they debuted it a few years ago. And yeah, there's a couple different choices you can make, but I feel like the outcome was going to be the same. And that's kind of what my frustration is with this game up to this point, is that, like, I'm enjoying the story better than people said that it would be. Like, I'm enjoying the story. The characters are okay. If they're not like a main central character, they all look the same to me, which I think is another complaint I have, where like the background characters all look like almost like they're fans in an MLB The Show game in the stands.
I was going to say like an old sports game. Like, yeah. It's like you see like the same, like, cut and paste patches of people over and over again.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm like 7 or 8 hours in. I just met the character that Keanu Reeves plays, spoiler alert, but I've been going a little slower than I'm sure most people have. But my issue with the game is that I feel like everything up to this point has been a tutorial, and that everything I've done, I've had to do it the way they wanted me to do it. And that's not how they marketed the game. They marketed the game where you get to make your own choices and handle things the way you want to. But like, I'm being forced to use guns at a lot of times where I want to use, like, I'm like most people, you want to be a hacker. I went a different route. Most people did like a nomad. I'm doing like the corpo hacker.
I did street punk.
There you go. So we have, but were you going like the stealthy hacking route as well?
I wanted, so whenever I first started, and that was one of the things I was going to get into, is I really found the skill tree to be like just too much. Like, there's five main skills, and then each of those 5 skills had 2 what I would consider major skill tree progressions.
Yeah.
And like how I wanted to play, I would have said I originally wanted to go through stealthy, But then when I learned that there was going to be like a hacking element to the game, I was like, oh, that's cool. And for what it's worth, I never played any of the Watchdog series. I had always heard that like that was a game about hacking, and I thought the concept was cool. But I think you actually told me it was less fun than you expected it to be, and I just never gave it a try. But
just from the first one from many years ago, I heard the second one was incredible, but I never played it.
Okay, and fair. But for whatever reason, I was gonna try doing the hacking thing, but then immediately I was like, man, when I picked my character, I put all my points into cool, and now I don't know how to do computers, so like I can just like smoke a cigarette and hit a jukebox and have music play, but I don't really have any like actual life skills.
Yeah, but see, that's the other thing is like I've heard people say that once you get later on into the game, doing all the hacking stuff is actually a lot of fun. I feel like in battles, I can already do a lot of the hacking stuff, but like it's just not that much of a payoff to me when it happens. Like I don't know. I feel like it should be more engaging and more fun, and like visually, I should see what I'm doing a little bit better. And I feel like it takes way too long to shoot and kill a guy on normal. Even I don't know. I might be too nitpicky there, but
no, I think that's fair. I also think that like you had pointed out that it forces you at times to like play the way it wants you to play. And I mean, to some extent, whenever you're telling a story, I understand like inevitably you've got to get this person in contact with this person if you want to get these lines of dialogue out. So I get that they have to force your hand a little bit. But I also agree with you, like even early on in the couple of missions I tried to do, my invisible guns had to come out because they wouldn't just let me sneak around and like try to knock people out. That's how I wanted to go about it, was going. I was even like excited about the idea that like during the tutorial, it's like if you can either kill somebody from behind using stealth, or you can knock them out, and there's ways to like hide the body. And I never once found a place to actually hide a body, nor did I find it like to matter if I did or not.
I had one part where like there was a street gang that was hot on my tail, or like I'd done something to piss them off, and there was two of them not facing me, so I non-lethally took out the first one, and the second one was standing in front of a dumpster. So I did the one swift motion that they train you to do. But like again, like you said, it seems like in the story, the main storyline quest, at least, you have to play it the way they want you to, and I hear rumors that like when you open up the game and start playing a lot more side quests, that it feels like you're playing two different characters, the one you wanted to create and the one they make you create. And I get that it's a big game, but like you promised all these things, and you promised to make this character a certain way and make it your choices. And so far, I just haven't felt that yet. But like I literally feel like I just got through the tutorial, 8 hours into the game.
And that's never a fun thing. I mean, like
No.
a good tutorial level in a video game feels like just you're, starting to play the game, and it's slowly kind of like letting you have control more and more as you go along. But even when it's done well, it's never like a highlight. You're never like, oh my God, I'm so glad I got to do that. It should just accomplish the goal of teaching you what you need to know. But I mean, I think part of that comes into the other aspect of the game that I think I would have found annoying, even if it worked perfectly. And that in some ways there's like too much option, but on the other side of that coin, it doesn't actually, it doesn't matter. Like even in the little bit of dialogue that I experienced with NPCs, which also super frustrating that like most of the time when you walk up to an NPC, you can see what their response is going to be before you ever interact with them. Like it's like written out above their head. Maybe they patched that out, but like at least when I was playing early on, every time you'd walk up to somebody, you'd like see written out what they plan to say to you. So it's like, so there's literally no point in talking to anybody. And then on the rare occasion where you actually do get a choice, it would like, okay, I said the thing I wanted to say, but you have to keep going until you say like the key thing that makes the scene progress. So like, it's like, okay, I said the top option, but you have to hit B before it'll let you move on.
Yeah, so it felt like it didn't matter what you said, you're always going to be led to say the thing they want you to say, which in games like Fallout, every time you click a line of dialogue, that opens up a dialogue with you saying just that one thing, which it's one of my favorite things about the Fallout games, and especially like everybody that you talk to can give you a quest potentially and things like that. And again, I hear later in the game there's a lot and lots and lots of side quests in this game, but the beginning just feels way too drawn out to me, and I was hoping it was building towards something better, and like I just started. I mean, I can't really explain why I've been having fun with the game. I really can't. Like I've been enjoying it, but I think a lot of it might be like finding the different guns and like thinking that everything I pick up might be something important. And like the main story I've actually been enjoying, and I feel like that will continue. But for all the complaints I have, I can't really explain other than the story why I'm having fun with it.
Well, and I mean, it's definitely a cool concept. Like I said, even when I read the description of it a second ago, it sounds amazing. Like I want that to be cool. I love the idea of doing like cybernetic enhancements. Like and even from the little stuff I've seen, like it seems like there's a ton of different ways you can go with that if you want to. Like you can make your cybernetic enhancements benefit you in a variety of different ways, from kind of zany to, you know, pretty standard, like health boost or steady aim, or being able to like jump 30 feet in the air or something ridiculous. So there's a lot of cool stuff to be had with the idea. But I think, again, a lot of it all to me at the end of the day just always comes back to it's a great idea that wasn't finished. And it sucks that it's 8 years after the fact that you announced it. But if it's 8 years later and you haven't finished it, don't release it. Like,
it's already been 8 years. What's another 2 years?
What's another 6 months? Yeah. Why can't this be a summer release? I mean, I don't really know the marketing strategy behind it. I'm sure that there is a lot of course it had to do. I was going to say, I was literally about to say, I'm sure there's a lot of corporate pressure to get this game out in time for Christmas, but man, that must have backfired, since most people at this point have accepted a refund for the game unless they're playing on the next gen or I guess now it's the current gen console and we're just living in the past. But unless they're playing on the new Xbox or the PS5, a large percentage of customers have returned the game.
Which just proves everything that you've been saying up to this point. They should have just been patient and finished the game correctly. And I know that they've expressed, you know, their sadness and tweets and whatnot and statements about how they want to make sure that everything gets patched. And, you know, this could be another No Man's Sky where a year from now or 2 years from now, everyone absolutely loves the game and they're playing it for hundreds of hours. But
I've heard that No Man's Sky got really good in post updates.
And I had that game when it first launched, and it was kind of disappointing. It was very disappointing.
It was empty. Yeah, No Man's Sky was on my list of things to talk about in that exact way. I do kind of see that as being a possibility. But ultimately, even if that does happen, I mean, CD Projekt Red, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
They have that's the studio that made this game. They have given themselves a huge dent in their credibility, in their reputation, which they're a major studio. What they're coming off of The Witcher 3, I believe. Is that their last big title?
Yeah, and that game is just so beloved by so many people for good reason that this will tarnish their name a little bit, but if they have a successful game that comes out, 4 years from now, then it won't be a big deal at all at that point. I feel like we're just stuck in the now with all of this right now, so it's so much more impactful. But years down the road, it won't be as big of a deal anymore. My big thing is like they've tried to hook people like you who aren't RPG fans into an RPG, and I'm worried that like they've tarnished the good name of role-playing games so that you won't want to play them anymore.
Well, I mean, I think that's absolutely true. I don't know if it's fair to say I don't like RPGs, because first of all, pretty much every game is an RPG in some way. But like, I do not like very involved, like lots and lots of menu options. I don't like huge skill tree progressions. When I play games, I typically like something a little bit more simple. Not to say that I don't like upgrading my character, and like I'm currently playing God of War. It's got a progression tree and like a weapon progression, a body progression, a magic progression, and like your kid progression. So like it's fairly detailed. You've played it, you're familiar, or no? You haven't.
I haven't played the newest one. Yeah, but
you know what? I'll just jump over to a better example that we can both kind of talk about, and I know you want to talk about it anyway. Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima has about where I'm comfortable with like my skill tree progression, and like anything out, like once it starts to branch beyond that, I personally get bored. I'm like, I came here to lead, not read. Damn it.
Well, with games like Tsushima and like a Spider-Man where there are skill trees, the thing is, you get that feeling about like 3/4 of the way through the game that you're going to be able to unlock everything, so you don't really have to worry about it. Whereas games like Cyberpunk or Borderlands, you have to actually make a choice, and it's going to be how your character changes. So there's a little bit less stress involved in games like that. But yeah, definitely like.
Yeah, I want it all, man. Don't give me just a taste. I don't want a slice of pie. I want the whole damn thing.
But we might as well talk about it. I mean, this was regarded as this will be the game of the year when it comes out, and then they pushed the release back so far that it's not even going to be considered in this year. We've actually already had the Game Awards.
I don't think it's going to be considered next year either.
No, it's not. But I mean, you're talking about Tsushima, so let's hop into it. Like, I know it's a Cyberpunk 2077 show, but how angry are you that Last of Us 2 beat it for Game of the Year from like the critics' votes?
I was more upset about that on this one. I'm not angry at all. I'm just very disappointed.
I mean, either way, it's good for PlayStation and Sony, I guess. But yeah, it's I'm upset that Tsushima didn't win Game of the Year. Now, to be fair, I did not finish Last of Us 2 because Tsushima came out, and I switched immediately over to that and was blown away by this game we knew just a little bit about, that we were even on the fence about buying, and then we bought it, and then the rest was just history. I mean, we still play it occasionally online with the new modes. And I have not had that much fun playing a game in a very long time. I could say maybe Spider-Man, but like outside of those two games for like the last 5 or 6 years, there's a very short list of games that have piqued my interest, like these two, well, particularly Tsushima has. And I'm upset that it didn't win Game of the Year, but it did win the fan vote Game of the Year. So there's a little bit of
redemption on that. Yeah, and I don't know who votes, honestly, and I have a lot that I want to respond to on what you said, actually. I think, first of all, I think just last night you and I were talking, and I said that if I had to think of the best game for the PS4 for the entire console generation, my choice would probably have to go to Spider-Man, though I was saying it was neck and neck with Ghost of Tsushima. But I think I would rank Spider-Man number 1, Ghost of Tsushima number 2,
and then How to Say Tsushima.
Then I'd list Tsushima like 6 other ways, and so I'd eventually get it right. But on that list would be Uncharted 4. Honestly, I don't even know. I'm sure The Last of Us 2 would make like the round out somewhere on like my top 10 list, but I liked The Last of Us 2. I thought it met my expectations. I thought like, oh, this is going to be a really fun game, and this was a really fun game. Ghosts of whatever the fuck. You and I had randomly saw like them talk about it just briefly on this Friday nerd show that I watch on YouTube that does like video game like news, and like the guy on that is Game Ranks, but the guy on that was like, oh, if you haven't heard of it, look at this new game coming out on the PlayStation. It looks really unique and kind of fun. And I was like, huh, that does look kind of unique and pretty fun. And then the next time you and I talked, we had both independently heard of it, and we're like, yeah, why don't we give it a try? And sure enough, blew us both away. Just a fantastic game. And that game, I think that even if my expectations had been really, really high, for instance, the multiplayer would have been an example where it's like if the game was so good that I don't think it really could have disappointed. It exceeded expectations, though, without a doubt.
One of my favorite parts about Ghost is that it made both of us use play styles that we don't typically play. So, like, I would consider you, in more often than not, more of a guns blazing kind of guy. Like, I just want to kill these guys and get to the next area. And I know you have your occasional stealth runs, but I feel like with Ghost, you actually played stealthy pretty much the whole time, whereas I love playing stealthy, and that is my jam. But there was something about being a samurai walking into a crowd of enemies and being like, hey, come fight me, absolutely loved about that. And it was like, it was kind of a weird thing to me that we both...
You were all like, let me honor my uncle. And I'm like, yo, Unc, your fighting method is whack, bro. Like, I am changing shit up around this island.
To be fair, I did not honor him.
That was my actual dialogue in the in the game, for what it's worth. Which it's weird that Ghost of Tsushima lets you have more dialogue choice than Cyberpunk 2077 does.
Well, at least from what we've played so far, I'm sure it gets better. But I do think we need to add that in there, that we're still both very early into Cyberpunk, but I think Miles is already done with it at this point.
So I have basically decided that first of all, I'm pro refund. So if we decide to refund, it goes away. Cool. If we do keep it, I have basically decided that I will not personally touch it again, probably until the PS5 comes out. Just because I've had such a frustrating run with it. And I feel that two things. One, the PS5 version already works better. It's already, significantly improved experience than having to try to play on a PS4. And then two, by the time I actually get around to locating and purchasing a PS5, there will probably have been significantly more updates to the game to try to fix some of these bugs. So I figure it's just more win-win, since they weren't smart enough to not release the game in a broken state. I will just try to be smart enough to wait till the game is, not out in a broken state. And it definitely helps that I've already kind of seen this game and already identified there's going to be a lot of this and I'm going to find tedious. Also, the driving is terrible. Terrible. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if we can talk enough about that, but oh my God, that was the other thing that I was probably most excited about, because I do like GTA, and that's definitely an RPG. And I love driving around on the island in GTA. I haven't played in a while. Every once in a while, if I ever feel like just driving in a video game, GTA is my go-to game. I'll just get on, put on one of my sports cars and, zip around through the freeway or the city streets and have a good time. I expected Cyberpunk to be like that, but with cool futuristic cars. And I was legit excited to be able to customize vehicles, and I kind of just assumed that would be part of it. And it seems like the car aspect of the game was vastly overlooked, both in the driving mechanics and in any sort of being able to make that part of your experience. Because you get the one car, and that's pretty much it, from at least as far into the game as I got.
Well, I think later on in the game, there's a whole side system of getting new cars and buying them out of magazines, but I've heard they cost a ridiculous amount of money, and that has to be just the thing that you want to do if you want to do it, and that it's not very enticing.
And it doesn't make them drive better. It's still the same driving mechanics.
I've called my car twice since they taught me how to call a car. I'd rather walk. Just to discover stuff.
That was another really frustrating experience I was having. I would be in the middle of having random dialogue with people. I would do nothing, and all of a sudden, they would start trying to kill me. Sometimes it was the cops, and I would just suddenly become wanted. But it was I was committing no crimes. I was in the middle of having a conversation, and then all of a sudden, it's just the red flash comes on, and they're people start shooting me, and I'm what the fuck is happening? Am I at a public school right now? I am so confused.
Oh, that takes the hit. But you must have done something in a previous mission
where I hadn't even done it. This was literally the first mission. This was when it been I just got out of my apartment after getting there for the first time, after dealing with that bug at the bridge crossing where I couldn't get through for the longest time. I walk out and you're in that mall area, and I went and tried to talk to somebody, and there's a cop on the staircase, and all of a sudden he just starts shooting me.
Didn't you say you picked the street gang back?
I was a street kid, but I mean at that point, I wasn't in any way sus, as the kids say.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know how to sympathize with you on that one, since I did not have that difficulty in my playthrough so far.
You non-broken bastard.
It's first generation.
From a gameplay standpoint, though, we agree the driving is not great. You'd rather walk. You've said you've experienced some bugs, and your biggest complaint is that you're not really having the sense of freedom that you were expecting, or that it was advertised to have. But because you have had a different experience than I have had, what is your favorite part of the game so far? What is, and don't, not just the story, because I know you said the story, and not spoiling it, but like talk is, without spoiling it, talk as much as you can about the aspects that you actually enjoy about Cyberpunk 2077 and why you don't want to return it.
Well, I mean, it's not fair to say talk about your favorite part and then say that, but you can't say story because that's the only thing I've really adhered to is what I've been enjoying.
I just been trying not to like tell like the entire story is all I meant. Like,
I have enjoyed the main story up to this point. I hear the main story is only about 20 hours or so. And that they kind of make you want to keep playing the main story because of quote unquote restrictions they put on your character. So you can do with that what you will with your brain. You can kind of figure out the story path, I think. So you told me not to spoil it. I kind of did there, but I heard you get all the freedom to do all the side missions after that. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to get to. I want to see the point where like the side characters become so interesting that you want to start doing their stories. I did meet, a few side characters right before I got to the point I just got to in the game that I thought had interesting stories. And I've seen people talk about how they do have interesting stories. So like, I feel like I'm just kind of like pushing and grinding to get through that point so I can go explore these other character routes and see what happens with them and see if they can, help you get some cool cybernetic stuff going. But yeah, I've enjoyed the story, and the few times where it's actually let me hack in battle, even though I say like I feel like I don't have a lot of differences in how I hack in battle right now, it is kind of satisfying when you try to use the blind the enemy for a few seconds and then you see them actually like cover their heads. But like I said, if I'm behind cover when I'm using that, I wish there's a better like visual representation that it was happening, if that makes sense. But like,
so you actually knew that it was successful?
Yeah, like the first time I did it, I was like, oh, I kind of saw the quick flash, and I think he's holding his head in his hands. But like, if I start shooting him and he's not blind, I'm gonna get killed because my health's low already.
Mm-hmm.
But and there's just kind of that like, I hope I'm doing this right aspect to it, where like
that's even after 8 hours of tutorial, if you're still asking yourself like, oh, I hope I'm doing this right.
But well, and I don't understand. I had to look up videos on how the numbers and the hacking works, because there's a point where like I thought I was doing it right, but then I started failing with every button press, and I was like, what the hell am I doing wrong? So I had to watch a tutorial for that. That's something I would have liked the tutorial on a little bit more in depthly, is how that works.
Agreed.
And, like the amount of gigs that you use in your cybernetics, and like they cost different things at different times. And I'm like, did I just skip over something too fast and I don't realize what I'm doing now? Because that's where don't give me a straight narrow path to walk on the main story. I can do that on my own without you telling me what to do. Give me the tutorial on the stuff where like I want to have fun with this part, so teach me.
Yeah, I don't need to push up on the L stick to walk. Like, I figured that part out on my own. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm kind of with you there too. And I found the getting into the video, like you're fast forwarding and rewinding, like you're basically like living through people's memories is the idea. I found that really frustrating. I didn't feel like they explained it very well at all. I felt like the only one I actually did was, so the only one where I like was really in control, I should say. There's the one that you do as like a tutorial, and then the very first one where there's like a guy has a girl over. He's like some criminal dude that has some secret bullshit in his apartment, and you basically are spying on their interaction and looking for various bits of conversational clues and other stuff. And that took me a frustratingly long time. It was to the point where I'm like, I really want to quit playing this right now. I do not want to be doing this anymore, but like, I need to get done with this, step so that I get an autosave so that I don't have to come back and start over. Does that get any better? Did you also find that experience frustrating? Is like, did I just have like the bad luck with the worst one, and then like as soon as you get done with that, it gets better afterwards?
That's really the only one I've done, and I didn't really have that much. Like, it took a while to get it going at the beginning, but once it actually started letting you do stuff where they weren't talking to you the whole time, it got a little bit quicker. There was one spot where I had trouble finding something, but like each bar at the top has like the little highlighted parts where the clue is within a certain range of the time frame on the video recording. So if I missed it, I would just go back to the beginning of the little highlighted part and just scan around the room while it was going through.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I just like, there is one thing in particular. It was like this it's the safe. You have to find a safe. Sorry, but like there's some safe you have to find, and it took me forever, like forever to find it.
Hard for me. I scanned one thing, and they're like, oh, "I don't think that's it," and then I moved my cursor in a particular direction randomly, and it happened to go right over.
So honestly, it just sounds like it's a matter of like you've had really good luck with the game, and I had like the worst luck with everything in the game.
Pretty much.
Which is frustrating, but I mean, it is what it is. Again, I'm glad you're having a good experience. Another thing I wanted
to you actually go for the safe, it's a narrow path story element, so there's really no like excitement when it actually happens.
Even worse that it took so long.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to talk about, though, because again, I would you agree with me what I said at the top of the show that this is going to go down as one of the biggest game failures ever?
Blunders more than failures. I think it's too early to see because, like I said, there could be a No Man's Sky in the future where people come back to it, but definitely one of the biggest blunders in video game history, especially in the digital age.
See, but even like your No Man's Sky example there, even though it's a great game now, apparently, even like every list that ever gets made, it's always near the top of like the worst blunder. Like I would say that at this point, there is a very good chance that Cyberpunk 2077 is going to outrank No Man's Sky as a bigger blunder on a bigger blunder blip, I guess we'll say.
A blipper. I'll tell you right now, like I will make this decree, but I can be proven wrong instantaneously, especially if you want to buy the game and play it with me. But after playing No Man's Sky when it first released, I'll never touch it again. Like it wasn't fun for me. Every planet you landed on was toxic, so you die within 10 minutes of being there. Like it was just so frustrating. And then I was trying to find other people because I heard stories of people like running into other people, but you can only hear their microphone. You can never actually see them on the screen. Like,
oh, weird.
Too much.
It's like you're in like different dimensions.
Yeah. And I've heard now it's like, I don't know, you can have like up to 4 people on the same server so that you guys can all go exploring together. But I'm like, that takes all the discovery and fun out of it. And again, I've heard it's incredibly fun and amazing now, but my first experience was kind of how yours was with Cyberpunk, where it's just too soured in my mind. I don't want to do it again. I don't want to pay money for that again.
That's why I'm making myself just not go back to Cyberpunk right now. Like I'm so early in the game that even if I had to completely start over at like I've played for probably 3 to maybe 4 hours, but I don't think I'm more than actually like an hour into the game, if that makes sense, just because of how much I had to keep going back and starting over. And also just, I mean, there was times where I was like lost because the map was loading around me and I couldn't see anything. Like I'm looking for a door that isn't actually fucking there because I can just see through, walls and stuff. But like, even if I could see where I needed to go, I couldn't see that there was a door in between me and it that I needed to open. So.
And I haven't had any of those issues at all. It might have been because I switched internet like a month ago. So maybe it's just working.
It's clearly your internet is what happened.
Wow. Whatsoever. But yeah, I see. Honestly, dude, you're only like 30 minutes, maybe to an hour and a half behind where I'm at story wise right now. Like you're very, very close to where I'm at. I've just been trying to do all the side stuff I can as I was doing the main story, which a lot of that's blocked off at the beginning.
So I was asking you if you consider this to be a big blunder, only due to the fact that I wanted to talk about other big blunders. We've talked about No Man's Sky. We talked about Fallout 77. Are there any other? What's that? 76?
Yep.
Okay. Excuse me. Sorry. We're doing Cyberpunk 2077 and comparing it to Fallout 76. That's not confusing at all. Maybe they're direct sequels. Maybe that's why they both suck. But no, I do want to know, can you think of any other major gaming blunders since you didn't want to call them failures?
I can safely say at this point, being a huge Mass Effect 2 fan and relatively okay with Mass Effect 3, except outside of the ending, that Mass Effect Andromeda, bought that the day it came out. Played it for about 3 or 4 hours and haven't played it again since. I consider that to be a blunder on a franchise that was highly touted and everyone was super excited about it. And now they just announced at the Game Awards, they did the sneak peek trailer where you see that they're bringing Mass Effect back, and it looks like it's going to be like with the old characters possibly. So yeah, Mass
Does
Effect.
that have you excited, or is the Mass Effect Andromeda so bad that it's like soured your expectations for the next one?
It depends the actual characters they put into the game, because like one of my problems with the third one is I felt like they didn't give enough screen time to some of the characters I like fell in love with in Mass Effect 2. And some of the new characters were fun, but some of them weren't, and it was just like Mass Effect 2 just caught me off guard because I played it years and years after it had released when they finally ported it to PlayStation, and they just completely caught me off guard. And that seems to be a trend with a lot of these games, that I play them after they've already been out for a while and they catch me off guard, with the exception of Tsushima, because we got that when it came out. But I would say Mass Effect Andromeda, and I'd never played Anthem, but I heard Anthem was a pretty big.
I heard Anthem was a big old failure too. I also never played that one either. I'm trying to think of other games, and I'm struggling, but there is one other big gaming blunder that does pop in mind in general, and it's just the entire Wii U. I think, though, it's almost the opposite problem. Like, it wasn't overhyped. It was just, like, not hyped to the point where you're like, is this some sort of weird accessory or add-on to the Wii? And, like, I don't really need a tablet for my Wii, so I think I'm good. And then when you see the price tag, you're even more blown away because, it's priced like a new console, which is crazy.
That's crazy.
But, like, gaming wise, the one thing I will say that makes this very unique is that going back to older systems, like even the PlayStation 2, if a game released in this state, like you couldn't really update it on the scale that they do nowadays. Cartridge, not at all. If you got a bad cartridge game, it's just a bad game, and it will always be a bad game from now until the rest of time. But I will give Cyberpunk 2077 credit where it's due. It has a very unique look when things are loaded correctly. It's got like a fun environment. And you probably think I've already written it out, and to some extent I have on the PS4, but I truly am optimistic that like they will turn it into a game that I'll at least enjoy roaming around and playing. I was also, though, admittedly disappointed that it doesn't seem like there was even an attempt or an idea of any online option on this game, which it seems like the type of game that would have been really fun to at least been able to like go and like cruise around the like future city with your friends.
Yeah, or even do like some kind of player versus player arena where you can try to like hack at each other to like slow somebody down for a few seconds while you're trying to shoot them. Like they could have, but that would probably just make the whole universe crash if
they got to get the universe working in a single player before they try to put that shit online. I mean, to be fair, it took Grand Theft Auto a few stabs at it before online.
Don't even get me started on Grand Theft Auto 5 and its online bull crap.
Well, you haven't played it since like literally like it launched, and it's literally not even the same game anymore. It's crazy. Like everybody has flying cars now.
Well, that's fine for all the people with flying cars, but that's another game that when the online first released, that I was having very frustrating times with that, and it soured my experience, and so I was done with it. Whereas you've been having loads and loads of fun with it.
I was playing it a lot during quarantine. I'm admittedly kind of burned out again. I go through phases with it, but when I have fun with it, I have a lot of fun with it. I've definitely got my money's worth on it. And again, in terms of driving mechanics, Cyberpunk could have learned a lot from GTA. Like driving in GTA feels really fun.
Well, I'm glad that you enjoy it so much. That's in whatever the name of that city is.
Los Santos.
Los Santos. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think so. Now you've got me questioning my own sanity. Oh well. Cyberpunk 2077 is what we're here for, though. Richie, is there anything else that you wanted to comment on? Is there any other comparisons you want to make, or just any other thoughts bubbling through that cheerful little Santa brain of yours?
Just fix your game. Everyone's already said that. I know I've had very few bugs, but like I completely 100% understand why people are refunding the game. Especially like I would even say with the amount of time you've played, like, yeah, you've had a lot of bugs, but maybe not as much as everyone else has been having. So like, I can see how frustrating that could be. And like, I got lucky the one time the game crashed that it was 1 minute into dialogue with somebody after an autosave. So I got really, really lucky on that. And like you said, it seems like I've just been getting lucky in general with my playthrough of it. So if I keep putting more hours into it and it starts happening, I'm probably going to want to break my controller through the TV and then realize that the controller nor the TV did anything wrong and it was the game I could have refunded. So
now this cost me $70 and a controller and a TV.
Yeah. So please, CD Projekt Red, I know you're working hard and I know you want to make everybody happy, but the happiest thing would have just been to spend a little bit more time fixing the game you've been working on for over 8 years.
Yeah, release shit when it's done. Art takes time. I get it. Like, don't push your stuff out early. I mean, did we not learn anything from E.T.? That's the other big one. That's the honestly, E.T. probably has the closest in common story to Cyberpunk, because E.T. basically was the last thing put out on the Atari, the thing that like buried the Atari, and like technically the PS4 is on the way out now. It just so happens to line up with Cyberpunk 2077. No, but that game was pushed because of unrealistic deadlines for, holiday to hit the holiday season. And it was a disaster that couldn't be updated via the internet. So I'm with you. I hope that it gets fixed, and I hope that it becomes a good game that we can both enjoy. But yeah, I don't know. Time will tell, as you had already said. But I think that's going to do it for this best darn everything. But we appreciate you being here. We appreciate you hanging out. We appreciate you listening to this, and we appreciate you listening to our other, well, it's like the same show, but about The Simpsons. It's the all off week. I still haven't really figured out the numbering sequence myself, so I'm working that out live on air as we speak. But thank you for tuning in regardless, and thank you for following Richie the Whiz Kid at the Wiz_Kid23. I am at Mr. Most Days Off everywhere.
You can follow our show at Best Darn Diddly. That's Diddly. Miles said but.
Did I say but?
Earlier. Oh, I guess I just killed the conversation then. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. And I guess we'll be back with, what are we on now? Season 11, episode 2 next week?
We'll be back again next week to review the second episode of season 11, and it is Brother's Little Helper.
We'll have less crashes than Cyberpunk.
And until next time, be cromulent to each other.